Supergirl, Women of Tomorrow, issue 8, the final issue. This is Tom King, of course, and Bilquis Evely on the art. Yeah, obviously we had the cliffhanger. What's funny, actually, is that all of Supergirl, Women of Tomorrow, until the end of issue 7, 7 to 8 is the only time that's different. But they've all had these time jumps because they've all felt like really distinct individual chapters. So issue 7 getting into issue 8 is the only time it's had a direct cliffhanger, which had to be picked up like immediately. And it's interesting because it almost makes it feel like the most important transition between issues because they didn't really do cliffhangers in the traditional sense before. This made it feel like a really big deal that there was a cliffhanger because it just gave it this more weight, which is interesting.
Yeah.
To just not do it the whole time at the issue ends, but then do it at issue 7 get into 8. It's a neat touch. It gave it a bit more of an effect because of that. But yeah, we ended with Ruthie with the sword up to Krem's neck, and she's going to make the choice to kill him. But here, as Supergirl is still dealing with the brigand with Comet, it actually is a bit more long form than that, where she unties him and says, "No, like my father taught me right from wrong, and I can't just kill someone unarmed like you did. Like it has to be more of a fair fight." Which just feels like, oh wait, you're just setting yourself up for failure then, because this guy
right. But we know that she survives enough to write all this down, right? So then it started to make me question things. I was like, well, we haven't been seeing her keeping a journal. I'm pretty sure she's gonna make it out, but I got very worried here. Because this is, as we've seen throughout, this is a very bad dude.
Because there's always the chance that this is like a post-grave narration, right? There's always the...
Right, there's that too. Yeah. And so when she sticks the sword in the ground, it was like, all right, we're going to race to it. And I was like, oh, what are you doing, girl?
Yeah, and she kicks him in the face, and Krem gets... It actually gets quite brutal where she cuts off his fingers. So there's like a really great... Because she manages to get the sword, and she cuts off his fingers. He's yelling, "You bitch," like over and over again. And she has the chance to kill him, and when she actually gets the chance to swipe at his neck, she can't do it. And she keeps trying. She tries like multiple times, and every time she just can't do it. And it's this big thing. So it's this idea where she like really has the chance to, and kind of earns it in fair combat as well. It's not just like she can kill him in cold blood, and she still can't do it. Meanwhile, Supergirl shows up with Comet now in human form. Because he's dead. Comet's dead.
Yeah, so that was the thing. I don't know if we brought up on Comet when they first showed up, how just weird Comet's origin is, and I was wondering if King was going to get into that at all. And I kind of just love how she explains it, but it's almost in grief, like it's he was cursed, it's complicated, but that's not the point. The point was that he was still there for me.
Yeah. It's the sort of thing where really she explains it really quickly, and it's like, if you really want to know a lot about this, go and look it up because it's quite weird.
Right, but I love the pacing of that when she puts him down and sees that Krem's there, and that Ruthie has let him through. He's in not good shape,
The big reveal here, though, is that Supergirl is that Crypto's fine. Crypto was actually okay from the start because she took him to a vet on the planet and he's fine. They've dealt with it. Crypto's completely fine, and this journey was about trying to like teach Ruthie to let go of her vengeance. That's what the whole point of the journey was. It was about her. She didn't need her help to track down Krem. She could have done that on her own to arrest him or bring him to justice. This was all about giving the girl a teaching moment. And what's the dark irony of it, though, is that she feels that she's failed, and because of that, she almost like says, "Well, there's a hypocrisy in my teachings," because she thought that she could teach her like to not like obsess over the thing, but it's a crock of shit because I still dream of Krypton. That's I mean, I'm paraphrasing slightly, but she's like, "No, I still dream of Krypton, so who am I to say that you should give this up?" And she actually goes to like maybe kill Krem herself, and it's actually Ruthie yelling out, "I learned the lesson. I learned it," to stop Supergirl from like sort of like betraying herself and becoming someone who kills. So there's this really wonderful kind of knock-on effect of like, no, Supergirl did teach her the lesson and made her like an empathetic person, and in turn, Ruthie had to then teach her that back and sort of say, no, you did teach me this. Like, I'm going to stop you from doing this. And so there's kind of a sweet ending here to it, even though it gets like Supergirl's in a really dark place by the end. And it's this idea of letting go of those things that sort of like you obsess over your whole life. And for Supergirl, it has been the destruction of Krypton. It has been this. And I think that's why King took the time to tell her really sort of dark version of her leaving Krypton. It was
the Argo City stuff.
Yeah, the bit more in detail than normal. And we get like the montage through all the chapters of the journey. Yeah, like all the different situations they've been in as she narrates through it, and it's great. It builds up, and Supergirl says to her, "It's too big and we're too small," which is something Ruthie said back at the start of the series about how small you feel when everything's like overbearing. And we cut to the future where Ruthie's an old woman after she's written her book, and Supergirl shows up in a different costume with shorter hair just to sort of show that time has passed. And Ruthie's like saying, "Who's a good boy? Krypto's a good dog," and all that. She admits that, "Oh, you read the book? Oh, it's full of like there's nonsense in that book. I made
there's half truth. It's fiddle-faddle."
Yeah, which you don't really know what's fake until the last page where she mentions that in the book Supergirl did kill him, like she killed Krem. But basically she's here just now because they're going to let Krem out of the Phantom Zone, and we find out that he spent 300 years in the Phantom Zone, serving time. And apparently, after 100 years of being angry and then 100 years of whatever, he actually spent the last 100 years being, reformed, and he's been trying to redeem himself, and he's remorseful for what he's done. And Krem comes out of the Phantom Zone, and he starts saying he was a lost soul, and he's begging for forgiveness and all the rest of it. And he's pleading, please forgive me, as he goes over to Ruthie. And the last page is kind of a punchline where Ruthie, with her cane, as an old woman, hits him on the head and walks away. And the final beat of the story is this idea that she's moved on and she has given up her vengeance, but that doesn't mean that she owes him for forgiveness. And that's okay. And she leaves. Because I did notice that some people online mistook this as her killing him here at the end.
Yeah.
And he's not.
At first I did, because because it's all in silhouette, first panel, it looks like blood spatter, right? So it almost looks like she stabbed him, but then you see him move.
Yeah, he sort of face palms on the ground in silhouette. Yeah, he's sort of holding his head in pain.
She gives him the old kabang, I saw people complaining too that after all of this, Kara still referred to as Supergirl and how disrespectful that is. And then when I finally got to read this, I was like, well, wait, that's how Ruthie knows her.
Yeah.
And that's how Krim knows her. So even after all these years, when Kara shows up, and she might be Superwoman, she might have different whatever.
Yeah.
To them, it's still Supergirl.
I don't... And I also like the idea that like it would be disrespectful for her to still be referred to as Supergirl. If she's still cool with being called that, then I don't see the problem.
And I was like, that's a real small thing to get hung up on at the end of this fantastic issue. You know,
and like you say, it's, to them she's still that, regardless of whatever she's been known
and for all we know
in the greater world.
As the movie Interstellar taught us, time moves differently in different spots, right? And so for Krem and whatever, it might have been 300 years, and for Kara though, it might not have been. How long? Because we all know time also moves different in the Phantom Zone.
Yeah. Because I'm not assuming that Ruthie's like 300 years old here. I'm assuming she's 80 or something like that.
Right. So like time moves different and all this other stuff. So like, the whole point though is like through his imprisonment in the Phantom Zone, he had to sit with his thoughts, and he learned the same kind of lessons that Ruthie did, just through a different perspective. And at the end of the day, she's just like, well, yeah, no, I'm gonna bonk him on the head. After all of this, so it's really, really well done.
Yeah, and the narration here at the end is at the end of the book, and at the end of the book that she wrote, she actually wrote that Supergirl killed him. And it's just kind of like that. That's like what she meant by, and maybe there was other things that were also kind of fabricated, but that's like the main thing that we know for a fact is false. So no, it's really nice, and it's an interesting touch, because it's all about letting go of what you're obsessing over, of letting go of whether it be vengeance, or in Kara's case, I wouldn't call it vengeance with Krypton, but there's definitely an anger.
Yeah, there's with her, it's this weird mix of anger and grief. Is that, she has to mourn these people in a way that Clark didn't have to, because Clark never really knew the other Kryptonians. He was a baby.
Yeah. And
These are all memories that she has, and that she has to come to terms with her, that are just gone.
And and for Ruthie, with the death of her father, that was effectively her world being just taken from her. And
Right.
it's kind of funny. You in a different context, you could totally do this story with Kara. Like, if the ages were different, like this could be Bruce. That's this could be her trying to teach Bruce to let go of his anger and vengeance. Although then we wouldn't have Batman, so it would be a different version of that. But there's so many superheroes who have this tragic thing that happened in their backstory that you could fit into this if you wanted to. But obviously here we get to actually deal with an original character for all the reasons that offers, and partly because we want it to be this universe spanning adventure through all these different worlds and species and whatnot. I like that a lot. Supergirl often is defined by being angrier than Superman, and also the fact that she did get to remember Krypton. And I think this being her trying to help someone remove their obsession and anger, but sort of using that to explore that she still has this anger herself, is, I think, it's a good bit of storytelling.
Yeah, and how she learns to move on from it, and becomes with that the super, let's just call her the Superwoman, that shows back up to visit Ruthie, to let her have this closure.
And some of the sentiment towards the end as well, bad things are still going to happen. Cruel are still going to be cruel to the weak or to the kind, but you keep trying to help people, you keep trying to do nice things, and you keep trying to restore the balance. And it's those forces, and there's someone like Supergirl who's there to keep trying to push that forward. So there is an uplifting vibe here, but it's also that final little point which has a little bit of humor to it. But it's you can give up your anger and your revenge and all the other things, but it doesn't necessarily mean you owe the person that you were angry at forgiveness either. It's still on them to deal with their own guilt if they ever get to a better place to actually feel that. Because obviously Krim didn't, and in the main part of the story, Krim was just this completely monstrous asshole who didn't care about anything but himself.
Right.
But no, so
yeah,
very good. And honestly, the only problem with this is that when you compare it to other Tom King books, is that he's got such a caliber at this point that it's hard to go. I mean, I guess we'll rate this issue first before we bother comparing it. But what are you giving Supergirl issue 8?
I'm gonna give it 8.5.
Yeah. I think I agree with the 8.5. I think I'm in the same wavelength as that. But yeah, as far as comparing it goes, I really dug this story ultimately. I think once it started to find its feet and I knew what it was doing, I was really into it. The only problem is that when I compare it to Rorschach, Strange Adventures, or Mr. Miracle, all of a sudden I'm like, well, it's fourth in the list.
Yeah, just because it's not even an issue length thing, right? It's just kind of the subject matter. This is a lot more focused on Supergirl. Those other books are kind of sprawling. Rorschach had this intricate, web of stuff to keep track of and whatnot. And so for simplicity, that's great, right? It shows a different speed of King. But yeah, it's not but that's still a very strong 4.
Oh, for sure. This is head and shoulders above the stuff that I don't like from King, which is Heroes in Crisis, or this is not even. This is great. This is much better than what Batman and Catwoman is kind of sitting at.
There's only 5 of those, let's say, and that one's easily 6th. Yeah.
So no, this is great. This is the low end of the great Tom King stuff, which sounds like a weird backhanded compliment, but that's a good thing. It's
yeah.